from the BBC's Future of Journalism Festival in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm Myra Anubi, and this is People Fixing the World. Hello and habari, as we would say back here. It's such a treat to be in Nairobi, and once again to be in front of this audience and to be with you because I grew up here. This city has shaped me in so many ways. I've navigated these streets, and I also started my radio journey here. Nairobi has a certain magic to it. It's where skyscrapers meet the savannah, but unfortunately, it's also got a few challenges. Roads are congested. In fact, I don't know, a show of hands, how many of you got stuck in traffic either today or this week when moving about? Yeah? Basically everyone, right? There's that, but there's also the fact that streets are now polluted. I've noticed this since I've been back home. Also, housing is very expensive, so people are being forced to live in informal settlements. Almost half of the world's population now live in cities. This has doubled since the 1950s, and it's led to poor sanitation, a strain on infrastructure, transport, and resources. But I'm Myra, and I'm all about solutions. So today we're bringing together a panel of experts and innovators from Nairobi to figure out how we can make cities better for everyone. And our experts today are here on stage with me. We've got Constant Cap, an urban planner working for the United Nations Environmental Programme, who's passionate about making cities accessible and inclusive. We've also got Christopher Mara, founder of an electric bike company called Kiri EV, who wants to make our roads less polluted. We have Etta Madete, an architect and founder of Shout Group and Zimmer Homes, who is making sustainable and affordable housing. And finally, Lorna Ruto, founder of EcoPost, a group that's cleaning up the plastic waste around us and making useful things from it. Thank you. And also, of course, we've got all of you, the audience, with great ideas, which we'll be coming to a bit later on. Now, we're talking about cities, right? But I want to start with a bit of a different question for everyone on the panel. If you could tell us, what do you think, in your opinion, is one of the best cities in the world? And it could be for any reason. The only catch is you can't say Nairobi.
Okay, I can't say Nairobi. I've said it. Anyway, one city that to me really stood out was Tunis. And for various reasons. Many of you will be surprised. Tunis has had a light rail system, an urban light rail system from 1985. One of the few African countries that has such a facility. In addition to that, it's got a mix between very good historical heritage that may take you as far back as the Roman Empire and a lot of modernism in modern systems and such. And the parts of Tunis I had the opportunity of visiting were very walkable, very movable, and there was just that feeling that one is at home. Yeah.
Over to you now, Christopher.
You know, you started off with an African theme, so I'm feeling like pressure to stick to Africa. But I'd say my favorite city is Shanghai. It's just has a blend of new and old. Transport is fantastic, and there's also a huge transition to e-mobility. I've been there a couple of times. The first time I went there was, 10, 15 years ago, and you could see the pollution, you could see the petrol cars. 10 years later, everything is just silent. A lot of electric mobility, the transport infrastructure has really improved, the air quality has improved greatly. But to just add another city, I'd say Kigali, because Kigali, at least in my sector, is really driving what I'd want to see Nairobi and the rest of Kenya replicate, especially for the e-mobility sector. Yeah.
Thank you. You've broken a couple of rules, but I'll accept it because those are good examples. Etta?
He took mine. For me, it is Kigali. I've been to many African cities. I've been to many foreign cities. But there's few cities that begin to show an example of an African urban future that requires the participation of both state and citizen, and basically has rules in place that enable the citizens to behave in the right way. And that has led to a very clean city because of a policy in place, on how to keep the city clean. So good policy enables good people to build good cities. So Kigali is that for me.
Lorna?
Let me choose Singapore because of the way it designs around people, and then the stability, the accessible health, mobility. And Singapore because of the infrastructure. I'm sorry, I'm breaking the rule. I went there and I was blown by how beautiful that city really is. And future Nairobi, I just can't avoid to break. Just watch this space, how Nairobi shall be.
Right. So I clearly have a group of panelists who are breaking rules. But I found with solutions, you kind of have to do that, right? You have to go against the norm. Now, let's get into a bit of the work that you do. I'll start with you, Constant. You're a city planner, currently working for the UN, United Nations Environmental Programme, looking at ways to change cities, make them more sustainable and easier to live in. What is the biggest problem, in your opinion, that exists in many cities today?
We have what we call the triple planetary crisis: climate change, environmental pollution, and biodiversity loss. And those three are not only a global problem, but they also close in to local problems. So when you look at just the impact of climate change, that leads to other things, flooding, heat, urban heat island effect, etc. When you look at environmental pollution, we're talking air pollution, we're talking water pollution in our rivers, etc. And the same and that also links closely to biodiversity loss in our rivers, in our forests, in our public spaces, etc. So I would look at it from that perspective, that the triple planetary crisis actually affects cities at a much bigger scale that leads to many of the other problems that we begin to see.
And maybe you could tell us a bit about that. What's the best way to future-proof a city?
The primary thing is to put the human being at the center of what you're doing. For example, in transport, once you understand how people move, how people behave, it's easier to seek solutions towards the challenges that they face. In Africa, we have in many cities over 50% of the people walking as a primary means of mobility. Therefore, it's important that now we look at that particular behavior and then ask ourselves, how do we make it easier for these people to walk, to work? In Addis, they've done, is it over 80 kilometers? I'm sure we've all seen a lot of nice pictures of nice walkways and public space in Addis Ababa that are effects of some of these policies. So when you put the human being at the center of your activity and you develop a policy based on how people's culture, people's movement, people's habits, you're able to now start moving forward within in developing and advancing your city.
I'm also wondering, just taking you back to public transportation, what are some of the best ways of improving that? Because as we started this, everyone in the audience was saying they've been stuck in traffic in Nairobi.
You guys were stuck in traffic.
Yes.
I was not. I cycle to work every day.
That's true, but that's not a luxury that everyone has.
I also came here cycling.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is one interesting thing about cities in Africa is the growth over the last 100 years, if you look at it, has been tremendous. 100 years ago here, there was, just I think the police station and a rough road on the side. Now we have this humongous city called Nairobi, and it's the same all over the continent. So we're slowly learning how can we, innovate better. One thing that has happened, there are some very good examples. One is Dar es Salaam, who've developed a bus rapid transit system and working closely with the existing, what they call daladalas, which is the informal transport system with the existing owners.
Just to be clear, daladalas are they're like
informal,
vans or buses that transport people.
Yeah,
what we have in Kenya here
Kenya
is
matatus, in Uganda taxis. So a bus rapid transit system is one where you have segregated lanes, so it prioritizes the movement of people in their masses. And these have been seen in places like, have worked quite well in quite a number of South American cities, in Bogota, in Indonesia, in Jakarta, they also developed one. So a few African cities have taken that up. Dar es Salaam is, I think, the one that's leading at the moment. Dakar in Senegal actually have developed a bus rapid transit system that Chris would really like because it's electric, basically electric buses. And then you have places like Tunis that I mentioned who've had a light rail system within the city. So again, that prioritizes the movement of people, okay, in the masses, etc. And it takes a lot of investment, and that's why many times these things take time.
And it's good to know that there are many cities that are, investing in this as well. And it's also a good segue into Christopher and what you're doing with e-bikes. You started Kiri EV. This is back in 2020, the COVID year, actually.
Yeah.
What made you do that?
I've always been interested in the renewable energy sector. And I used to do Pico hydro systems and solar backup systems, but the market was really crowded. And so I was looking at what's the next area that, that renewable energy is going to grow into. And I just happened to come across e-mobility. And we settled on two-wheelers because if you look at motorcycles, first of all, in Kenya, it's the one segment where about 90% of the vehicles are bought brand new, 0 mileage, fresh off the showroom. So we're like, why don't we transition them to electric? We tested initially with off-the-shelf products, and we realized this is not going to work because they're not built for how we use them. Because everywhere else in the world, it's personal commuter transport. You get your bike, whether it's petrol, electric, and you go to work and you come back. Here, that is a workhorse. It's what's carrying people to and from the stage. It's what's carrying goods to the kiosk. So we had to re-engineer the bike. Once we did that, we got a product that works. It's kind of figuring out what's the business model, how people gonna use this product. 3-4 years ago, there was only about maybe 1,000 electric motorcycles on the road. Now there's 43,000.
I mean, it's a big number, which is a big thing, but not all of those are yours.
Yeah,
Just to be
of course,
clear.
yeah.
And basically, I'm trying to say there are more people in this space. What makes your product different?
So what we looked at is how do we reduce the total cost of ownership for the rider? So there's two models that are out there competing. There's battery swapping, which means you can come and swap your battery in less than 3 minutes. You get a new battery that's fully charged and you go. We decided to go the opposite where you self-charge, so you can charge it at home. This reduces your cost by about 60% because you're getting about R1 per kilometer versus swapping, which you're getting about 2 shillings per kilometer versus petrol, which is at about 5 shillings per kilometer.
So then tell us, how many of these bikes do you have out there now, and what sort of impact have they made?
So right now we've deployed about 120 motorcycles, pretty much all over the country. Every motorcycle we put on the road mitigates about 3.2 tons of carbon per year. So we've mitigated about, over the last 3-4 years, about 1,500 tons of CO2. And we reckon we've saved the riders that have been using on average about 50,000 shillings per year. Yeah.
Well, when we are on these bikes, we are possibly heading home. And that brings me to you, Etta. A fundamental need for everyone is to have a place where they can live and shelter themselves, but housing in Nairobi is becoming very expensive. Etta, you're a young architect, and you founded Zimmer Houses back in 2019. And you guys have just built your first block of apartments, pioneering an affordable and sustainable way of designing and building homes. Just to take you back, what happened? What led you to say, I want to get into this?
I think up to date, I've lived in over 16 different homes in Nairobi. But as a family, we were searching for affordability. Whether it made sense to live in a smaller house, share rooms, whether it means closer to the employment or closer to amenities or to schools so that the transport isn't that high. Searching for shelter that meets the requirements of your certain time in life is very, very difficult. And so when I became an architect, I realized if sustainability does not apply to the majority of Kenyans living in the city, then it's not applicable. It's not actually sustainability. Because in the long run, sustainability is more efficiency. It is better water uses and power uses. And so as I'm doing affordable and sustainable housing, we're now encapsulating this idea that sustainability, dignity, livable cities go hand in hand with being more efficient with our resources.
I just want to understand, you've gone ahead and you've had, this experience, a lived experience that's influenced what you're doing now. But how exactly have you gone about creating these affordable apartment blocks?
It's a good question. And I think it links to sort of like the main theme of what you're saying. How do you make Nairobi more livable? We've come here to work. We've come here to live our sort of 20s, 30s, 40s. So it is not a 5, 6 bedroom house that you will invest in the city. Maybe it's a bit of a small apartment or a rental asset that can give you investment afterwards. So it's the type of house and the building types that we need to build for this ownership.
Well,
and for Zima, we
yeah.
are focused on courtyard apartments. Compact apartments in cities is actually okay, but we can design for dignity by ensuring they have natural light, natural ventilation, they're supplemented by an open courtyard in the center, and that, yes, for example, in our courtyard, we have about 100 homes and half an acre, that we have amenities that are linked to that. And so those elements make the city more livable, but also imbue dignity into the people living in those homes in the city.
And so, how have you managed to make them affordable without compromising quality?
The design of the material choices, so trying to be locally produced, bio-based material alternatives. Right now we're using Yellowstone. We're trying to source from the local region. We consider nature material, trying to make sure that we're using locally sourced labor and different resources that are available as local as possible. When it comes to cost, we have developed a rent-to-own scheme for part of our housing to enable the end-user financing to be easier for people to afford the homes.
Thank you so much, Etta. And I mean, all these homes will produce waste, which brings me on to Lorna and what you're doing. Lorna, you're the co-founder of EcoPost that turns plastic waste into fencing posts. Tell us, what made you think plastic is the way to go?
I grew up in a small town. It was a nice adventure for me because I used to go chasing rabbits, chipmunks, and then I will dive in those hidden ponds while I was taking our cows to drink water, and I'd listen to birds singing. It was so beautiful. But due to urbanization and rural-urban migration, you guys, our home, my once beautiful home, became a small, dirty town with waste littering the streets, clogging the sewers, and even encroaching into our homes. But as a kid, I would see those plastic waste and I would take them and I would melt them and I would make ornaments. And then I sold and I discovered waste is not waste until it is wasted. So quite early, I was an entrepreneur. I used to make some money. So I decided when I grew up, I was going to do something about all that waste. And that's how EcoPost was conceived. It was actually conceived in 2009. And we recycle plastic waste and we manufacture products for building and constructions. And we have been able to recycle over 20 million kilograms of plastic waste since inception. This has, thank you. This has enabled us to provide suitable alternative materials to timber. So we've been able to save over 4,500 acres of forests. And what we do is has created 12,000 job opportunities, especially for the poor, marginalized youth and women groups.
I like it. It's a proper trash to treasure story, right? And I think you've come with a few examples of your treasure.
I've only carried this because the other ones are more bulky. But this would be a former bottle. This is a floorboard. We also make ceiling boards. We also make so many things with plastic. It's actually anything you can imagine.
This does not feel like it was, what, a plastic bottle?
True that.
Without obviously sharing the nitty-gritties, could you tell us what your process looks like? Do you just go collecting trash in landfill, presumably? How does it all work?
Right. Our business model is such that we work with youth, a lot of youth, former chokoras and women groups.
And what are chokoras?
Street people, but now they're not street people anymore. If anything, we formalize them and we make them become entrepreneurs. People are now, women are now paying school fees out of this business. People are getting access to proper health. I want everyone to look at, if I used plastic waste and I'm creating opportunities, what can you do where you are? So this is an opportunity for a lot of people to think about what you can do to create an impact.
Lovely. I want to take this opportunity now to go to you, the audience. Let's first start with any questions that we might have for the panel. Let's go to the lady down here.
I have a question for Constance and Etta. I was in Denmark, actually, for 10 months, where I had a culture shock in terms of mobility. Cycling and walking is huge. places are limited where cars can come in. And I want to, and when I came back to Nairobi, I realized how congested I felt for the first time in my life, despite being born and brought up in this city, is the fact that I can't bike anywhere. And my question is kind of probably twofold. How do we make cycling and walking a safe and accessible culture for everyone? And how do we also ensure that when we come to making sustainable housing, how do we ensure that we are not encroaching on land and also ensuring that there is enough space for the city to breathe?
Let's start with housing.
Our philosophy is that all density must be accompanied by dignity. We call it dignified density. And that's why we believe that urban Africa should only be urbanizing using courtyard apartments with protected views from every window. And we are trying to prove that by showing that it's commercially viable and even better because it's a productive asset. And even if you're not a tree hugger like me, I'm trying to convince my developers that you can make more money building in a dignified way.
Constant, would you like to talk about the cycling?
We have 1 billion people in Africa who either walk or cycle every day. Unfortunately, they're not supported with infrastructure, they're not supported with policy. So as we speak, all African ministers have endorsed the reality that walking and cycling needs to be mainstreamed at policy level.
Practically, what would that look like? Is it increasing pavements? What would that look like practically?
You can talk of just improved walking infrastructure through either better street design models, or prioritizing it in transport projects. But when you start prioritizing, when we have affordable housing projects coming in, we ask ourselves, how will people access these homes by safe walking infrastructure? The best way to think about walking and cycling is what we call, some people call the 880 model. If a place is safe for an 80-year-old and an 80-year-old, then it is safe for all.
Thank you. Okay. Next question.
My name is Crispinas Juma. How are we able to scale some of these, brilliant ideas that we have so that in as much as we want to reduce on plastic waste, we also don't end up polluting the environment? Thank you.
Lorna?
Yes, right now we are continually innovating. You will find that once you've started something, even if it's in recycling plastic, you're always ahead of the game. If it's AI, right now we are using an AI to digitize our processes and to make sure that we are optimizing processes, production. We are thinking about better materials like utilizing cassava to make the plastic of the future. And you scale, you also scale your assets, you scale your production capacity, your knowledge, your brain. So you're constantly innovating. And if the innovation is making something a problem to the environment, you need to reevaluate the design, change your business, change your model, but continually improve scale and be in the front line, making a difference in the community. Thank you.
I'm Samuel, a graduate electrical engineer. 70% of the cars or most of our roads are SOVs, single occupancy vehicles. Basically, it's just the driver. And this is a major cause of the traffic gridlock. So how do we change the mindset to encourage people to actually use public transport, walk, or cycle? Thank you.
A very good point. I remember that used to be like a standard. You finish your education, get a car, then get married. That was always a standard, and probably still is. Maybe Christopher?
So one, I think it's a mindset, but before the mindset changes, I think it's also starting from the infrastructure itself. If you look at, I lived in London for some time, and you don't have to go and wait for a bus. You know the bus is coming at this time, and it's like clockwork. Here, you have to wait for the matatu to fill before it moves. So you don't know that it's going to take 5 minutes, 1 hour, or 2 hours. You're just sitting and waiting. So if we can sort out just the basic infrastructure, you'll see it will become more of an inconvenience using your car. But most people wouldn't buy a motorcycle because you also feel unsafe on the roads. I've ridden on the roads and you feel like I'm going to get knocked by someone. So if we bring order back to our roads and we bring timeliness, I think a lot of people will start seeing there's no point to use my car because I have that convenience of being able to jump on a train, jump on a matatu, get to where I'm going within a few minutes and not have to worry about parking.
Very quick final word from each one of you. I will start from Lorna.
I think livable cities are cities whereby it's not just skyscrapers. I heard somebody mention it's skyscrapers and tall buildings, but it's the quality of life and day-to-day life in in the country, and what can you do as an individual to make sure that you're creating a difference, solving the problem, looking at the opportunity, and not the obstacle. Thank you very much, and I love you all.
Thank you. Etta?
I think it's about solutions. When I see Nairobi, when I see Africa, all I see is potential. I see 20 billion shillings, Kenya shillings, spent in rent per month that just needs to be converted to home ownership. I don't see the deficit. I don't see I see those things, but that's not where the solution lies. The solution lies in the potential. So all of us have an opportunity to come up with a solution in our sectors because Africa has amazing potential.
Mm-hmm. And so there are a lot of people fixing the world in the room. Thank you. Christopher?
I think it starts with us as a citizen, taking pride and taking action in what we do. If you look at, people just throwing out rubbish, then you expect someone to pick it up. We're told in Nairobi that the reason it's flooding is because our drains are clogged with rubbish. That's the first step. Start picking up your rubbish. Don't throw it in a bin. Start holding the people you elect accountable. They have money to build roads. They have money to do good. They're appointed to make good policies. So if we don't hold them accountable, then we can't expect drastic improvements in our cities without us ourselves being active citizens in making this change happen.
Yeah. And Constant?
Cities belong to the citizens. Okay? So treat your city as your home. Don't see it as somewhere external to you. Let it be part of you. Okay? The way you take good care of your home, take care of your city, participate in whatever is happening within your city, and have that sense of ownership.
Amazing. Thank you all. That brings us to the end of this live audience recording here in Nairobi of People Fixing the World. A big thanks to you all, Constant Cap, Etta Madete, Christopher Mara, Lorna Ruto, and last but not least, also our audience here at the University of Nairobi in Kenya. And as we say in Kenya, Kwaheri. Let's say it all together.
Kwaheri.
Kwaheri. Thank you.